Welcome, beautiful people, to my channel where we deep dive into a little bit of everything. We're all about fun, shady reviews, candid conversations, and honest social commentary. But remember, this is a safe space where we aim to have a good time. Our opinions are all in good fun, and remember, no offense or harm is ever intended. I'm your girl, Tammy. Hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Well, welcome back, y'all. Hey, how y'all doing? Welcome everybody who's new. Welcome everybody who's been here for a while. I love y'all. Anyway, welcome back. We are on episode 7 of season 8 of Ready to Love. Y'all, this episode to me kind of felt like a filler episode this week. I know we're kind of moving on down as far as like people finding their connections, but I really didn't get too much from this episode. But I will say this, and I have said this in multiple videos, I really am enjoying this season of Ready to Love. I especially love the men's lounge. And that is where we start off this episode for the week. So we are back in the men's lounge. We're in the Mason Lodge, which is very beautiful and well decorated. And we actually start off with Chris showing up first, Nigerian Chris. I guess I could go back to saying Chris now that the other Chris is no longer on. 2.0, teacher Chris, actor Chris, Chris with all the jobs Chris, is no longer on the show. So I'm going to stop calling him Nigerian Chris and go back to calling him Chris. Although I didn't appreciate his gaslighting in this episode, but we'll get back to that a little later. So Chris comes in and he actually says, "What's up, frat?" So right away, we kind of know that him and Tommy are frat brothers. People don't know Tommy is a Kappa, and so I guess Chris is a Kappa, which I find interesting because several of the men on the show have been Kappas, if we've not noticed. I know Quentin is a Q, but it's just interesting the frat organizational thing. I'm thinking he's pulling people from the pool. Anyway, there are 5 men left in the lounge, and the men's lounge has been really, really cool this season. Tommy's just talking about their connections and what's going on and how everybody's doing. And then he introduces a curveball because you know Tommy gonna have to throw a curveball in there. And the curveball this week is he wants the men to introduce the ladies to their ex. He says that, it's great insight. It allows them to see, the women to see, who these men were before they met them. And it kind of lets women know if you've really healed from your last relationship truly. I absolutely love that this is in the men's arena this week in terms of us meeting their exes. I really love this part of the show when they get to it, because I think it's one thing to present yourself a certain way. It's another thing to meet the person that used to date you and hear their opinion on stuff. So I was really excited that we were going to do the Introduce the X segment this season as well, because it's one of my favorite. We get right into this whole like meet the X situation right away. And one of the first meetups that we have is with Reverend Morier and Pastor Morier, Deacon Morier. And he is having us meet his ex, Jessica. Now, y'all know low key offline, they've been saying that Morier baby mama that had a whole bunch of stuff to say that's opposite of who he is on the show. But let's continue on to the show. We are meeting his ex, Jessica, and his dates that are meeting Jessica are going to be Janelle and Jessica. And his ex's name is Jessica. Look at that, 2 Jessicas. That's so weird. Anyway, before they get there, Morier explains that he wants to have Jessica ask them some questions that he hasn't been able to reveal for them. And he also wants them to see a part of his deeper spiritual side. Now, here's the thing. We're going to get to an end part of this a little later on, but I'm going to say this for y'all. This is sign number 1 that I knew all along that Morier was a hotep. Girl, I knew it 2 or 3 episodes back, but this was sign number 1. We're going to go into the different signs as we go through, but I knew Morier was a hotep. Anyway, so he talks to Jessica and he says that he wants her to ask some questions to the ladies about, sexual or how they feel about sexuality and sexual things, because he hasn't really gotten that out of them. And to me, this was already like strike number 1 about, that was just an inappropriate question to have your ex ask these women. I guess he felt like as women, they would be more comfortable. And so maybe they would be more open to sharing that with them. Sir, she is a perfect stranger. Ain't nobody interested in telling your ex what I like doing in the bedroom. That was just a weirdo question. It would be awkward for a woman to even be comfortable asking that, favor or not, to complete strange women. And he's a grown man. So I'm not asking that question for you. You want to know, you ask yourself. So the second thing he says is that he wants to see if she would be open to pulling some cards. So we find that Maurier is less, traditional religious as he is more spiritual, and that he believes in like a little bit of like card pulling, tarot reading, all that kind of stuff. The crystals, the metaphysical, he keeps throwing out there. Sign number two, Maurier was a hotep. Okay. As soon as he said metaphysical, sign number two, ladies, that Maurier was a hotep. So he essentially asked her to just get into the mix with these women, and she agrees to it. Not really having any reservations about it. He does state that they are both Christians and they have not ever shared that they would be open to that, and nor has he asked. So as we proceed, Maurier introduces her to the women because Jessica arrives first. And then Janelle comes in, which was really shocking to me because I never got a vibe of connection from Maurier and Jessica. I wonder a little bit if production kind of just had Janelle come. I'm sorry, Janelle, because they just wanted to add something else to the situation. Because I didn't really understand the connection. I never got a vibe that her and Maurier were connected. I think they were cool and I think they get along, but I never got romantic or anything. We've never seen any dates with them. I don't even understand how this dynamic occurred. To me, it should have been Sierra and Jessica. Maybe Sierra wasn't available for taping. Anyway, Maurier's ex proceeds to ask the sexual stuff. It's a no-go, as it should have been. And it was inappropriate as hell. And then she proceeds to ask the ladies, does she mind pulling cards? And Janelle basically says, clear from the start, no, ma'am, I will not be doing that. This house will, and this person will serve the Lord. I don't do pagan things. It's a wrap. Jessica echoes the same, as would many people, especially when you throw something like that on people without kind of feeling out how they feel about their spirituality and their personal religious values. Maurier feels like he wants a woman that's going to be more open to his spiritual realm, and he definitely doesn't know if he wants to do that. So now he's going to wait to spring the same trick bag off on Sierra, he says, to see. He thinks he might have messed up with throwing this to the ladies really quickly, really both of these questions, and he did. And, we proceed on to the next day. So then we kind of slide around to, more group dates, and we slide along to another Meet the Ex. And we actually get intertwined into two different Meet the Exes at the same time. They kind of go back and forth between two different guys, Quentin being the first one and Chris being the second. So we first get introduced to Quentin's ex, Bree. And I think they dated for about 2 years. At the time, Quentin said that he was more interested in being single, and that's kind of why him and Bree didn't work out. And she kind of confirms the same thing. Bree was very upbeat, very light, very cool. Actually, really, all the exes were. I didn't have a problem with any of the women. I think, well, that's not true. I will get into that in a minute. I feel like I liked Bree's energy. I liked Phil's ex's energy. And I liked Herbert's ex's energy. So a lot of them just had really positive energy, and I really like that from the women. Especially if a man is no longer in your life, you don't really have to hate. I even like Marie's ex's energy. She was still a positive person, just wrong questions, maybe inappropriately going along with things that he was interested in. I don't know. So it's just something that I was feeling. Now Chris's ex is a whole nother thing. So anyway, Janelle and Lee are the two people that Quentin wants to meet his ex Bree. Bree, again, lighthearted, very easy to get along with. She just started asking questions about how the ladies feel and, how they've been feeling on the date. And, she talks about how Quentin, early on, or maybe a little bit into their relationship, she realized that he just was kind of falling into himself and he wanted to maybe be more single. I don't remember if they said that he cheated. I didn't get that vibe, but just that he was not fully putting in 100% in their relationship, and it ultimately, resulted in the demise of their relationship. She asked the ladies how they feel about dating Quentin. They say that they're cool. He's a gentleman, very nice, very good guy. They wouldn't be here if he wasn't. And then she asked about, the attention. Has he been giving that full 100%? Janelle says yes, and we've seen Quentin go all in when it comes to her. And Lee says a little bit now. She doesn't say it there, but she tells us in the green screen that essentially Quentin, you know, basically kind of ghosted her a while back. The problem is Quentin steps in to kind of address his ex after she asked the two women, and he says that he kind of recently was just overwhelmed by the process and he might have ghosted Lee a little bit. He says that out loud and not in his head, and Lee was not feeling that. When I tell you sis' face was just like dropped and completely she checked out after that. Just wasn't feeling the conversation, grew really quiet. To be honest, Lee kind of always quiet. But I think she was disappointed with the fact that he said it out loud. I don't think he was being malicious or messy. I think he just said the quiet part out loud of what he should have said, maybe personally in his head about not being present. But I think he was also trying to take accountability for where he was slacking and not wanting to present himself the same way as he was in his past relationship. She asked him, did they feel any sort of competition? Both Lee and Janelle kind of say, not really. And Janelle says, ultimately, Quentin's been very upfront about who he's interested in. And, he's interested in both of us and been very clear about what his intentions are and how he's moving. Lee doesn't quite feel like that, but she just has now chosen to remain silent because of what Quentin said. Personally, for me, I just don't see it for the two of them as far as Lee and Quentin are concerned. I really was rooting for them. Y'all know that if y'all listen to my other reviews. But I don't really see it for Lee and anybody. And it isn't because, well, I think partially it is because her person may not be on the show. But I also kind of feel like a lot of the things that we accuse some of the other guys about, Lee has also been that way. Like, honestly, we don't know anything about her. She's kind of boring. It's not a lot of liveliness to her. I don't know if that's what they wanted to paint or what it was, but even on dates, I feel like she was always looking for the life in other people because she didn't really give any energy off. I thought we were going to get this like vivacious, personal trainer who was very like maybe high energy, and maybe, she has some balance because she doesn't want to, be that all the time. But she just gave me dead on arrival every time, honey. It was always a corpse. And I was just like, what's going on? Somebody get the defibrillator. Can we get some life and breathe it back into this girl? Like, it just was always like a very somber, too chill vibe going on. And I just felt like, we missed so much of who she was. The crazy part about it is recently OWN posted a date with her and the other Chris 2.0, Chris who ain't on the show no more. And that date was way more interesting than like half the times that they had her filming with Marvin. So I don't understand why we were getting or what we're getting in this person. But to me, honestly, I feel like it's time for her to go because she ain't really she's not really to me poking any particular feelings out of anyone. And ultimately it's just become less interesting over time. Whether or not you feel like your person is here, you still could give us a pulse, honey. Okay, y'all. So while we're watching Quentin and Janelle and Lee and his ex Bree have their convo, we're kind of interchanged between that date and Chris's ex Valerie meeting with Aries and Jessica. And well, Chris, of course, is at the table as well. And so we meet Valerie, pretty girl. She's sitting down, very calm. And, Aries is there. She comes in, she says hello. Do y'all get the feeling that Aries is basically just going through the motions? This may be Sis's personal style, but when I tell you, I feel like she never dresses up. Always very cute, body on point, but just never really dresses up. It's just very much jeans and a t-shirt, jeans and a t-shirt. She dressed like a substitute teacher. And it's one of those things that I just start to feel like maybe because she works in tech and maybe doesn't have to dress up as much. Because depending on what you do in tech, you may not have to always dress up. And I think that I feel like Aries was wearing a series of work outfits every time they went out. The only time that she dressed to the nines to me or dressed up was when she went out with Phil, honey. Because that dress Aries was wearing last week, sis was giving body. And she always gives body, but that dress said something to me, especially about the relationship between her and Phil versus the relationship between her and Chris. And we'll get to that in a minute. But either way, they meet the ex, they're sitting down, and then Jessica walks in. So she's the last person coming to the table. Jessica comes in very vivacious and upbeat. She's saying hi to everybody at the table. She says hello. She gives everybody like a little mini hug. She comes to give the ex Valerie a hug, and Valerie doesn't want to give her a hug. She's almost very standoffish. And I get that. Some people don't like to be touched, but something about this just felt weird. So she kind of halfway hugs her. Jessica sits down. How's everybody doing? How's the morning going? And it just was a negative attitude, not from Aries, but from Chris and Valerie. And we see in the background that Valerie basically explains that Chris doesn't like anybody who's loud. Mind you, Jessica was at a very normal tone for someone coming in that's saying hi, introducing themselves. This girl was not yelling and screaming. There was no loudspeaker energy. It was very much a normal tone. Something wrong, Chris. Something wrong with that ex. I don't care what you tell me. It was just something that was off about that situation. Like, even when she came in, she was greeting. She wanted to make sure everybody was doing well, all of that stuff. But either way, the ladies get to asking Valerie questions about Chris, and specifically they start to ask her, why did they break up? And Valerie explains that she did not want to be a forever girlfriend. And she was with Chris for a very long time, and he just felt the relationship wasn't moving forward after about, I think, 2 or 3 years. And so she just wasn't willing to stay past that. Chris then says that they've had multiple conversations about it. And that's what made me realize at that moment that Valerie not over there. Sis is still hanging on to whatever Chris did, and specifically that Chris wasted her time. And that showed up multiple times in this date, but definitely right there, especially after Chris said, we talked about this multiple times, but I have apologized. I still apologize because I just wasn't adult at that point. I really wasn't in the right mindset, and I wasn't mature in my relationship. And I was like, at that point, Chris really did invite the wrong ex. Because, or maybe the right one for the ladies, but the wrong one for him, because she told all the tea. She said that, he just said that he wasn't mature, he wasn't ready, but he does feel like he's ready now. Now, something I've noticed about Aries, and y'all, let me know in the comments how you feel about this. But something I've noticed about Aries is that she's very open as far as like apologies are concerned. Like, I feel like no matter what some of the men sometimes say, she's like very accepting in a way that feels weird. And that's starting to make me give a little red flag with her. I also noticed that, when they were at the mixer in the very beginning, and I appreciated that she saw this different perspective, but it made me wonder a little bit about her because, again, like I told y'all last week, I didn't know she'd been divorced twice and married twice. So when she stated last week that, she was married twice and that her ex didn't want the divorce, I thought that was interesting because in the very first episode in the mixer, Aries stated that she was happy that Brandon, who ended up going first, home first, that was the guy that was married to his same ex twice. And, he had just gotten divorced 6 months before. She appreciated that he wanted to work on the marriage. But she was just in a marriage that she didn't want to work out because her ex wanted to be divorced. Didn't want to be divorced. It was just real weird to me that was going on. And I was like, something about this seems a little bit off to me. And I thought it was interesting that she said that Chris's apology was spot on. And, maybe she seemed like Valerie wasn't completely healed from it. But I was like, was it spot on? Or did Valerie's never really accepted Chris's apology to begin with? That's what it started to feel like. Anyway, they asked more questions about what Chris needs and what he desires. And Valerie proceeds to tell him that Chris basically needs to be catered to his needs. And that the ex didn't feel like Chris returned that. So essentially, he needs a lot of nurturing. He needs a lot of, in my opinion, mothering. And you will not have enough left for yourself. And there are times where you're just in servitude and you will not have any time left for yourself. Girl, why did she say servitude? Because after that, Jessica dropped out. She didn't do it verbally, but she did it subconsciously. We could see it. She saw on the green screen. She was like, it will not be me. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. She stated that he needed soft energy. And she also stated that, he's not into, being challenged too much in terms of energy and being overpowered. And so, after every one of these dates, the women leave and the man asks the ex, like, how do you feel? She said she liked Aries for him because Aries was nice and light, and that Jessica was too overpowering. She was too strong and she wasn't soft enough. And I'm sorry. As I watched this segment, I was getting more and more heated because I just honestly feel like Chris is looking for a mother, not a wife, and nobody wants to marry their son. It was very clear that the loss of his mom early in his life, I believe, is the thing that is hitching him to want to maybe date a woman that has kids. We understand that he has a child, but just the way that he's been verbally moving with Jessica and the way that he is always speaking about what she's not giving and not really looking at his own behavior has made me feel like he's the type of guy that, one, probably should be marrying a housewife and not a woman who's going to have a career. Jessica owns her own business. And even Aries, is successful in her tech career. I just don't see it. I feel like him and Aries' connection feels unsexy. It feels like he wants to be with her because he sees the mothering side of her. And that's the most complimentary part that he's been getting, the nurturing side of her, the one that's going to constantly fill him up. But I don't get that energy from her with Phil. With her and Phil, I feel like Phil is like, this is my lady, this is my woman. I'm looking at her as a potential mate, not a mother. And I don't think any of the women deserve to have to deal with somebody who may not have worked on those issues. So to be honest, I think both Jessica and Aries need to leave Chris alone. So now we're on to Herbert and his ex Melanie. And Herbert wants Melanie to meet Janelle. And that's been his connection has been with, I think, Janelle and Lee, and then it was one with Kara. But I think he kind of pushed Kara out the way after last season. So his strongest connection really is with Janelle. And so they sit down. Janelle and Melanie actually have a lot in common. They kind of visually look a little alike to me. Both very tall women, so it's clear that Herbert likes a tall woman. And they're just sitting down for a nice little lunch and brunch, and they're sort of having a conversation. Janelle is asking different questions to her, and she asked her about her feelings about the process and Herbert in the process, and also what are her life goals as far as like what does she want to have happen as far as like marriage and children. And Janelle proceeds to tell her that, her ultimate goal is that she would like to be, engaged by the end of the year. Now, as y'all know, they shoot this show early. So it's not a situation where like, I think there's a lot of I don't know if they shot this in January or February, so it's shot pretty early, or maybe even late last year, and then it shows now. So it's been a minute, and she kind of gave it like a year. I think she said the end of this year or the beginning of next year, which I mean that's not too crazy. If you find the right person. She didn't say that she had to be. She just said that would be a goal for her. She said that she would like to be engaged and then hopefully married by the end of the next year. And then she does ask her about, what she wants as far as children. And Janelle says that, she's open to adoption. She's adopted, but she's open to adoption. She knows she's of a certain age. I didn't gather from this that Janelle wanted to just only adopt, but I think she's coming around to the realization about, where she is age wise, and that, there may be other options she has to explore more than some of the other women who may be in their 30s. Any woman really having a baby, I want to say after 35, and correct me in the comments, y'all. I'm not like a medical professional, but I believe over 35 is considered to be a geriatric pregnancy. That's a horrible name, by the way. But it's a geriatric pregnancy for, I think, any woman over 35. So it's not that you can't have it. We know women have safe kids all the time at different various ages. And, are the people in good health, the woman is in good health, but they're a little bit of a higher risk involved. And so I think she's just thinking about the fact that like, hey, I have all these other options. It may have to be a surrogate. It may have to be, some other way. And so Herbert said that he didn't remember her talking about that or the marriage thing. Now, the marriage part, I don't know. But she definitely said adoption in that very first episode in the mixer. And she stated that she was adopted and that she thought about adoption and she really wanted to do that. But maybe they haven't been, as clear on the specifics. And so he definitely wants to revisit that timeline with her. This date was just okay. I mean, besides that, Herbert basically said, I want kids from my own loins. So it is what it is. His ex did say that he is slow motion when it comes to things. And, that kind of raised an eyebrow for Janelle, and she just didn't know how she felt about him moving too slow and not having, that attention. That was the issue with them, I believe, about an episode or two ago when they were at the pickleball place with Quentin, because he just wasn't putting gas to the pedal. And a lot of women have made that a clarity with them and him. What I most was kind of like disturbed about a little bit, well, I don't know if it was disturbed or just like this was like a weird thing for me, is when Janelle said that she doesn't care about the past of the person she's seeing. And I was like, girl, are you crazy? Absolutely, your past matters. I don't think it has to define your future completely, but it is important that we know who you used to be, and why you don't want to be that person anymore, especially if your past is sketchy or uncomfortable. So, prior relationships, I think, are important to know. I don't think you have to know every single detail, but if you divorced, I want to know why you divorced. If you ain't never been married and you had a relationship just recently, I want to know why y'all broke up. I need to know a little bit about your past before we going forward in this situation, because it can tell you a little bit about your future, but it can also tell you whether or not you really want to deal with this fool. So, another date we got going on is Maurier and Sierra. And, this date was boring. It really was. There was nothing here. There was no life. He brings Sierra as his third person, because remember, he kind of messed up with Janelle and Jessica with that tarot card mess. So he brings them back to a restaurant. They don't pull cards, but he does ask Jessica to talk with her, and she's able to ask questions. Sierra actually says that she thinks Jessica looks like Tequila, who we know got eliminated over her madness over her BB. And honestly, they kind of do favor each other just a bit. Not strong enough to me, but obviously these people have seen each other up front. I didn't think there was anything wrong with what she was saying, because I don't think that Jessica's ugly, or that Tequila was ugly, and I don't think Sierra was implying that. I think she was just saying that they sort of look similar. And you have to remember that she kind of mispronounced her name, but Tequila really wasn't there long enough for her to know her. Like, we're watching the show feeling like we know these people and stuff, but they all were only together for a very few short weeks for this entire process. And then they were only together with those other people for a short period of this entire process. The women aren't dating the women, so they're dating the men. So it's one of these things where, like, I might remember your name, but then if you wasn't here long enough, even if you made an impression, with the storm out, I still may not know who you are. Sierra personally said that she's not a fan of men who are still in contact with their exes. She feels like if you are still in contact with your ex, or you have a relationship with your ex, that there could be something going on. Do you feel like you was missing out? Am I putting myself in a situation where if something was to happen later on, I feel like a fool because, hey, I knew he was cool with his ex. So I thought that was kind of a unique and different perspective. I myself don't necessarily completely care about you being cool with an ex. I don't know that I'm really a fan of you having an active relationship with that person. Perhaps if y'all were really, really tight back in the day, maybe y'all were friends that dated and didn't work out, or how long y'all were together if it was a very short period. But honestly, I'm kind of with Sierra on that. I'm not really a fan too much of the, close friend that's the, ex, or just, I feel like it's a little just muddy and messy. And I wouldn't be a fan of that. But Maurier basically says he's trying to see if he can get past the homey vibe that he gets from Sierra. He likes her. He thinks she's beautiful. And he did bring this up a couple episodes back about how he just doesn't feel like they come out of the friend zone enough. He just gets like, oh, she's the perfect person to chill out with. But is there something deeper? Is she giving me deeper? And, we basically got no. That was the answer right there. So, I got the homie vibe, but Maria is still hanging in there. So Phil has us meeting his ex, Amina. Amina appears to be a Latino woman. That's what she appears like to me. That's not really rare. They live in Dallas, so there's a significant population. And his dates were actually kind of interesting how they broke them apart. So they actually had Phil and Amina meet with uh, Aries, Kat, and Kira. When he met with Aries, it was just Amina, Phil, and Aries. But when she met Kat and Kira, they were together. And that to me suggested, like, one, it could just be when production sets up dates, because production actually sets up the dates for people to meet and stuff like that. And everybody's schedule has to align. But I low key feel like Phil wanted those dates to be separate, and specifically him and Aries, because that's who he probably is really digging. And he really just wanted to see how she felt about them as a couple. I feel like Kat and Kara was thrown in just to have something to do. Because honestly, I just feel like it's just not there with him and them. Amina says that basically they started off as friends, and the reason they broke up is because the affection just wasn't there as strong as she thought it should be, and then just the romantic part of who he was and all of that. Aries is a little bit shocked because, Phil is very affectionate with her. And actually, while they're at the table talking with Amina, he has his hand on her leg. So he's very much holding her hand into her, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that was like a clarity up front that her and Phil have a really strong connection. I really don't understand these days with Kara and Kat. But they shoot over to this date with Kara and Kat, and the ex again explains that she got kind of friend zoned with him, and that's kind of where they are. And she's a person that needs affection. And Phil said that he is somebody that normally does give affection and normally is into his partner and his mate. But sometimes when things can occur that life gets busy or whatever, it can make him not pay as much attention. And he really wants to work on that and wants to be better at that now than how he used to address it in the past. He also spoke about the fact that, one of the things that can make it hard was what made it hard in the past was when he was depressed because he actually was out of work for a minute. And girl, when he said he was out of work, Kara's eyes shot up like, what? It was very much Scooby Doo, like, and she was trying to see, like, out of work. Let's talk about this unemployment streak. So Phil explains that he's like an insurance adjuster or something like that, and he worked in an area where they normally have, some type of weather situation occur. And he never had an issue before with selling, whatever insurance or dealing with whatever situation happened. But when they had a drought or something that didn't occur weather-wise, and it sort of, I guess, dried up the industry and caused him to not have the employment for a little bit. So Kira tapped back into that to say, well, how long does this employment thing normally last? Is this a regular thing that happens? She started asking all the questions, honey, because she's like, look, I'm not about to deal with nobody who's going to turn around and be like, I need you to support us. So she wanted to know how often that occurred. I thought it was interesting that she did that. It was kind of funny to me. It made the date more lively than we cared about. Kat was focused more so on the affection part and saying she's somebody who needs affection, and she's not somebody who's interested in being with somebody who doesn't know how to show their feelings. By the end of the day, I think Phil was really thrown off with Kira asking a lot about the employment situation, because he said it was a small period in his life. It wasn't something that was common, and that he had worked himself out of that situation. But I noticed that with Phil, he gets very 0 to 100 sometimes with stuff. Like if he doesn't like something or one thing that occurs, he very much is like, I'm off of it. So he basically says that he's off of Kara because of how she addressed the situation. Although I understand where he's coming from. He did that same thing with Tequila early on. They had like one interaction that wasn't great, and he's like, I'm done. And I wonder if that's his issue that hasn't been addressed in his like life or his relationship life and being single at this point. But he basically is just like, I'm not feeling it. Of course, they all, disappear. He asked the ex who she likes the most. The ex says she likes Aries. She likes him for him. She feels like he's affectionate towards Aries. She likes her energy. She's positive. It's her choice. Wow, so now we back to this men's lounge. And of course, it's just the five guys. And we're going through all the scenarios. Who did wait, what date with who. Tommy's asking how the individual exes felt. I think we kind of touched on how every ex felt about the different women. Quentin also speaks on the fact that Bree really liked Janelle. He said that she felt like Lee kind of quieted down and we didn't get to know her personality. Janelle and him seemed to interact a bit better, and she was more into, being vibrant and focused. And she was also very clear about who she was and what she wanted, and that she felt like it was something that he needed. Quentin says that he felt like Lee shrunk in the room once she wasn't feeling some sort of part of the conversation, whatever. He doesn't know, or at least we don't think he knew or was aware of how Lee felt when he made the comment about ghosting her. But because she went totally silent at that point and rarely spoke, Bree didn't get to know her. And because she disappeared, he felt like he wants somebody who's confident, who speaks up. Because we know that the confidence issue wasn't the factor, it's hard because honestly, we don't know if she ever spoke to him right after or directly after about that before they went to the men's lounge. So as far as he knows, there was some other factor that had to be, an issue that made her shrink away. He doesn't know and is not aware that it was the comment because she never really said anything to him from what we can tell. We know that Lee kind of shrunk quietly, although again, as I said before, whether or not you like that comment, it doesn't mean you shouldn't engage in conversation at all at the table. It's just weird. At that point, leave if you feel like you can't stay and communicate. It's weird to have this woman ask you questions and be nice and vibrant, and you're just sitting there dead to the world. Like, I just don't understand that part. I would have just said, look, I gotta go. I got a class, but it was nice meeting you, and I would have exited out. Because just sitting there in the scene, just staring along, it made no sense. Herbert said, so he said he's really feeling Janelle. He loves her confidence. He loves her energy. Herbert said that he's also feeling Janelle, but she's a whole thug. But he likes that. He said he likes, a woman with a little bit of oomph in her, a little bit of something. And the other men sort of laugh and agree that that's kind of what it is. He explains that he does want to talk more to Janelle about her timeline because he thinks that some of the things that she wants to achieve um, is a bit much to him as far as the crunch of time. So they need to have more conversations about that and make sure they're on the same page. Marie explains that him and Janelle and Jessica went out and that his ex was feeling Jessica. He's saying he doesn't, but she didn't really get a chance to fully see Jessica because they didn't agree to the tarot reading and it was a weird experience. He says Sierra might be his only hope. And he said, but he really has a better relationship with Jessica. He doesn't know what to do. And so Chris proceeds to say, well, what did the cards say? And so everybody laughed and it was kind of funny. And then he just basically said that Chris basically said, if you're feeling Jessica, don't settle for Sierra. Chris then asked, and Tommy says that it's important that, no, well, after Chris said that, Tommy said it was important that you pick your strongest connection and not just based off of what your ex was saying either. Chris said that Jessica was loud, which we know he was gaslighting. Jessica was not loud. She was at a normal tone. If you just want Aries, say you want Aries, but stop making it seem like Jessica's this aggressively manly woman when she's been pretty normal as a woman. I honestly feel like Jessica has more wife energy, especially when she walked him around that party to remind people not to forget about him when he went to go get his award. She went and bought this man a picnic during work. She gives wife energy to me in relationship to him. Aries also gives wife energy, but I want to know a little bit more about her past because some of that is a little bit. I want to know that what the layers are to why both marriages failed and what this third marriage, what she's hoping to achieve and do. So I found that that was interestingly not a red flag for him for that, but that Jessica being maybe a person that doesn't shrink would be for him. And that to me was a red flag. Anytime a man wants you to shrink or not be as bright of a light, but wants you to give to him over and over and over again without even filling you back up, that's always a red flag. Feeling Aries to me are just a better match. The men feel like Sierra is for a good time. And this is because we're now at the point that Tommy is asking them who they are not feeling. So, like I said before, Quentin is feeling Janelle more than he's feeling Lee now because of the situation. Herbert is feeling Janelle, but he wants to know more. Marie has said he's kind of still going with Jessica. Chris is feeling Aries. He's gonna still give Jessica a chance, but he just still feels like Aries might be the right fit. And Phil is saying, like, look, me and Aries got it going. So they asked them who they're not feeling, and the men mostly say Sierra. They basically just said that she feels like a homie. She feels like a good time, a good friend. She's beautiful. She can dress, but they're not getting a lot of layers from her, a lot of depth past just a good couple of jokes. And they also kind of resoundingly say Kira because they just feel like, there was a cultural issue. That's something that, Marie brings up again. Hotep vibe number 3, when he talked about his health and all of that kind of stuff, which, there's a series of things there. But they also just say that Kira just doesn't seem to be like very open. She's not opening layers to herself. And there's more of a gotcha energy with her. And she, there's just issues around how she moves and, maybe being a bit messy. So like I've been telling y'all, this episode was just okay. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Sierra and Kara both go out. I can't even remember who went because at this point, honey, I can't tell you I fell asleep at least twice. But essentially, the men's feedback to Sierra was, "Hey, we like you. We think you're cool, but we only get surface level. We only get jokes. We want to see more. We want to see layers to you." She feels like she's been giving layers. She feels like she's been revealing, but she says she does know that she holds back a little bit and she's a little protective. So she understands that she has to give more if she wants to get more from the situation. Kira says that, the same thing. They feel like Kira's a little closed off. There were issues around her also stating, and she repeats this with her date with Phil, but other men in the lounge repeated this, that Kira does not prefers not to date a man who has children. She didn't say she would not date a man with kids. She has dated men with kids. She just says it's her preference not to. But I think because a lot of the men wanted to eliminate her or were ready for her to go, they were using that as a thing, because she definitely did not say I would never date. She just said her preference isn't because she doesn't have any. And Kara's also one of the youngest people there. I think she's like 31. So she's like, I think was the youngest person in the dating situation. So totally understand where she's coming from. She just left her, late 20s. So that comes up, and then of course the issue around the cultural issues and the blackness, and obviously that was the issue with Quentin and the white girl situation, and that was also the issue with Marie and the whole cultural community situation. She says that she's offended by the blackness comments because she feels like she's never questioned her blackness or who she is, and she feels like it's just being used as a way to kind of eliminate her from the process. At this point, and I know she made some sort of like longer apology online, but like earlier this week. But at this point in the show, I feel like Kira just was being very defensive about the feedback and wasn't really listening to it. I just also don't know kind of what her end goal was on the show. I kind of feel like every date that she was on, while it's important that you do dig deeper because you have such a short time to find your person, I feel like she did a lot of like challenging the men to like make sure that they weren't lying about something when she was talking with them. And I don't think that that's ever attractive for anybody to do when you're first getting to know me. People will reveal themselves if you let them talk long enough. You don't have to overly challenge them in individual moments to make it feel like they're underneath investigation. And I feel like sometimes if you go back to some of those dates, Kira did that with a lot of the men. Like they would say something and then she would add like a question to see if they really would like that. She would always do it in this Eartha Kitt voice. Like, oh, so what's really that about? And so it was one of those things where I think they kind of felt like they had to be on the defense about themselves or their values or whatever. And you can see when things contradict. We could see that Marie saying that he was healthy and eats a certain way don't match him with that belly. There's things that we know over time will reveal themselves. And I feel like she just didn't give them a chance to do that. And I think that that made them, kind of turned off from her. So essentially, the women are told the feedback, and Kara is told that she is not ready to love. As I said, y'all, this felt like a filler episode for what's coming up next week. I don't know how many episodes are for the season. Normally they do around, I think they do 13, but it just depends on how long they make the reunion, because sometimes they'll split it into pieces if it's really, really spicy. So I think we have 10 episodes of Ready to Love, which means we would have 3 more left, and then the reunion, which is usually normally split into 2 parts. So tell me what y'all think. Drop some comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.